This is a story about a girl named Lucky. But seriously, so lucky and blessed because this is the story of how I could have died. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. I am sharing a very personal story that happened almost 14 years ago. And it is a story about a medical event that did happen to me. And thankfully, since then, I haven't had anything serious happen with this, but I really tell this as a cautionary tale for women's health and just to really bring some recognition to what happened to me in case if you've experienced this as well. So I feel like to better understand what I'm going to talk about, I need to give a little bit of my background and medical history. So let's go back to about the age of 14. So I was 14 years old when I had my first period, and I was in cheerleading. I was very active. So I had the first one. It was maybe a couple of months after I had the second one. And then after I had the second one, I just wasn't getting another period. And so my mom took me to my primary care doctor, and basically he took one look at me. He looked at my weight, my height, my BMI was super low, and he just said, "You just don't have enough body fat on your body to have a period. So this is very normal, just like gymnasts. So, it's all fine." So I was in cheerleading at the time, and I stopped cheerleading, I stopped track, so I wasn't as active, and also I gained a little bit of weight, but I still wasn't having a period. So my mom decided to take me to the gynecologist because of the concern, and there were some different symptoms that I had. So I always had acne. I had really coarse hair. Being half Italian, I felt like it just always kind of fit them. Maybe I was just like a hairier person, but it did seem a little excessive. And then obviously the biggest symptom that I had was I wasn't having regular periods. So my gynecologist did some different labs that she ran, and it was found that I have a medical condition called PCOS, or polycystic ovary syndrome. Now, I am a medical social worker, but I am not medical as in I didn't go to study for years and years, but in the medical field, but I do feel like I've done a lot of research on PCOS. So it is a hormonal imbalance, and I feel like sometimes people don't want to claim which one it goes to, whether it's gynecology, endocrinology, but with my main labs, I had elevated testosterone, so that will cause the excess hair growth, that will cause the acne, it can cause thinning of the hair. And I also had an elevated luteinizing hormone, which is, from what I understand, I think it's like a hormone in the pituitary gland. And if it is high, like mine is high, if it doesn't drop low enough, it's not gonna ever release an egg. So if it's always reaching high, you're never dropping the egg, you're never having a period. So that was what I come to understand whereas my main things that were going on. So when I first got this diagnosis, the main thing that they told me was to take birth control. I was told birth control actually will fix the PCOS. I was told that over time, if I take this consistently enough, that I would no longer have PCOS. And when I was given the birth control, I was never told of any of the adverse effects, at least from what I can understand. I was 16 years old, so I don't remember them reviewing anything with me because I also wouldn't have been a high-risk person for any of the side effects from birth control. So I took birth control off and on until my 20s. So this is kind of where we're coming to the height of the story. So I was in grad school. It was my second year of grad school, and it was probably about February when I was doing something for one of my classes, and all of a sudden I just got this wave of dizziness that came over me. And of course, concerning because if you're feeling dizzy, you're worried you might pass out. When I was a kid, I used to be hypoglycemic, so when my blood sugar dropped, I would pass out. So of course, dizziness is worrisome. And this is a dizziness that I experienced for the next couple months. I went through various doctors. I went to a neuro-ophthalmologist. I had an MRI of my brain. I went to an ENT doctor to be tested for vertigo, and everything was coming back as negative. So anyway, I was left with no answers, and it ended up being the spring break of the last year of grad school, and I went to go visit my friend in California. And then I got back, and right before classes were going to restart again, I decided to get a massage because grad school can be very stressful, and thought it was a good way to decompress. A lot of people throughout the course of my dizziness actually would kind of sum this up to being stressed out. You're really stressed. Maybe the stress is causing you to feel dizzy and off. So that was a lot of the feedback that people were giving me. And I mean, no offense, but I'd been diagnosed with anxiety since I was a teenager and never experienced anything like this. So I didn't really feel like it was anxiety related. However, I went ahead and I got the massage, and I had never let anybody massage my legs, but the girl had told me that to get the best alignment for your body, you should really get your legs massaged. So I went ahead and I let her massage my legs. And after the massage, I definitely was like, ooh, she really dug in deep there in my back. It was feeling some pain, but it was a pretty deep tissue massage, so I didn't really think much of it. So later that night, I actually am set up to go like with some friends to a comedy show, and I just am like, oh my gosh, my back is really hurting. So I take some ibuprofen, and then I go to this comedy show, and let me just tell you, it hurts so bad to laugh. I was like, wow, this is crazy. I've never experienced this after a massage. Got home from the comedy show, and I'm trying to go to bed that night, and I'm in so much pain that I end up having to call my parents because I can't sleep, and I'm telling them what's going on, and they're like, you're fine, just put some icy hot on it, just take some ibuprofen, you'll be fine. So the next day I go to the store and I get some icy hot and probably some additional ibuprofen, and throughout the day I'm just still in a lot of pain, but I'm, just summing it up to the fact that this was a very intense massage. So that Monday, I end up going to my internship, and my internship was at our local Veterans Administration, and it was probably about noon, and I had taken like 6 ibuprofen because I was in so much pain. And at one point I went to the bathroom, putting some icy hot on my back, and I am a person who loves wearing a bra. I'm not a person who's like, let me take my bra off when I get home. I was at the point where I needed my bra to come off. It was like hurting so bad. And so I was kind of in freak out mode of like, what's happening? So I get back to my desk, and my field instructor asked me to call a patient, and this like wave of nausea just comes over me from the pain. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I really need to leave. I think I need to go to the emergency department. I think I need a muscle relaxer. So she lets me go to the hospital, and I'm at the point where I'm in so much pain. I go to grab my bag with all of my books in it. I can't even lift the bag because I'm in so much pain. I get in the hallway, and some lady finds me, and I'm like struggling. So she gets me a wheelchair to put my bag in so I can wheel it out. And at this point I'm like crying because I'm like embarrassed that I have to use a wheelchair to get my bag to my car, but also a little bit once again in freak out mode of like, what is happening? So I start driving to the hospital, and let me just tell you, this was seriously had to be the worst day because on my way to the hospital, I get sideswiped. Car drives away, and I get to the hospital and I look at my car, and there is a dent in my car. So I'm like, cool, great, okay. Get to the emergency department, and they basically tell me once I get through triage that I'm going to be fast tracked. And working in a hospital, I will tell you my wait was really not that long because I've seen people wait a really, really long time. So I waited about 3 hours, and I started to reach a point through the 3 hours where I'm feeling better. I've taken the ibuprofen. So I am feeling like maybe I should just go. Like maybe this is like not a good reason to be here. But thankfully I do stay because right when I'm kind of thinking I want to leave, they call my name. So I go back, and the nurse practitioner starts asking me some questions. So she asks me if I've recently traveled, which I'd recently been to California visiting my friend in an airplane. So I had recently traveled. Because I was on birth control, that's another thing that they kind of like told me that, they were kind of looking at. And then when I got to the emergency department, they looked at my resting heart rate, and it was 118 when I got there. Sitting for 3 hours, it went up to 123, my resting heart rate. That is insanely high for that to be your resting heart rate. So red flag, that's not good. They do a test called a D-dimer test, which I believe tests your blood clotting factor. Mine was 600, should be nowhere near 600, should be like basically 0. So then the lady's like, we're gonna do a CT scan, CAT scan of your lungs to see what's going on. So I'm about to get that done, and at this point I'm by myself at the hospital, and I'm texting my brother who's in nursing school at the time what's going on, and he reaches out to my parents and he's like, we need to get to the hospital like right now. So my family ends up meeting me at the hospital. I get my CAT scan. And then we get back to the room, and you've kind of just got to know my family. We're very like, make jokes probably at very inappropriate times. It's a coping mechanism. So, my family's kind of joking with me, and the jokes are hurting because my back and my chest is like hurting. And the doctor comes in, and or actually, no, it was the nurse practitioner who initially came in. And she said, so I have your CAT scan results. And she said, she's like, so you have blood clots in your lungs. And she said, there's one really big one that's back there. And that's probably the one that's causing all the pain. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, how many are there? And she's like, there's too many to count, to be honest. She said, they're scattered all throughout your lungs. Okay. So thankfully, it's a protection for me. I had no idea how serious this was at the time, because even though I was like at the Veterans Administration working kind of in healthcare, I'm social work, so I don't know all of the medical things. So the doctor comes to talk to me and kind of seeing how we're being very unserious. And she's just like, so you could have died. And I, at that point, lost it because I think it was, settling in that this was something very serious, and it really is. So when I first started the job I have now, one of my coworkers actually died from what's called a pulmonary embolism, which is what I had. So that is the blood clots in your lungs. Because if they block one of your arteries where there's not blood flowing, you basically die from, I believe, like it would be oxygen deprivation if there's no blood flow. Also, they could dislodge and go to your brain, and you could stroke and you could die. So it's very serious. And what I suspect happened, so if we go back to that massage story, right, and all of the dizzy spells I was having, I think that I had DVT, which is deep vein thrombosis, which means that I had blood clots in my legs. I think when I got that massage and they dislodged to the lungs, I think that is like what happened when she massaged them. It moved the clots to the lungs. So that's what I suspect, because shortly after all of this, I wasn't having my dizzy spells anymore. So I think that is like what happened. So anyway, I've had some doctors say no, I've had some say that makes sense. So I don't really know, but that is like what I suspect. So they did a bunch of blood tests, and they basically ruled that my birth control is what caused this. Now, I don't say this story to fearmonger, because I am not an anti-birth control person. I think it serves a purpose. I think you should be well informed of the risks that it does carry, but I do think it is something that for some people, the pros can outweigh the cons, right? So I am not an anti-birth control person, but I do share this as my story of, from what I was told, the birth control is what caused this to happen, which then made me obviously very upset, because I was taking birth control for another medical condition, the PCOS. So I was told I could never take birth control again. I was told I will be a high-risk pregnancy, which at the age of 24, I'm already told at the age of 16 that having this PCOS, that getting pregnant's already going to be really challenging for me. Like, I have in my head one day I'm probably going to need to do IVF. So now we've escalated everything to a point where now I'm thinking, oh, cool, now I get to be a high-risk pregnancy on top of like having just difficulty pregnancy in general. So that's a lot to process as a 24-year-old, what that means for your life. So, there's a lot of emotions that go into that. Anyway, so that night I got admitted overnight to the hospital. And then the next day they were like, we either keep you here for 5 days on a heparin drip, or you learn how to do shots, Lovenox shots in your belly to help with the blood clots. So if you know me, you know I hate needles, like absolutely like petrified of them. So I'm crying. It's just like, it's a very emotional time in general. And my brother, being in nursing school, he's like, I will come over, I will help you with the shots. But I ended up learning it and figuring it out. So I ended up being able to leave because I learned how to do the shots. So so this is a Tuesday by the time I get to leave the hospital. And I initially I tried to go back to classes the next day, and I was having the worst side effects from they gave me tramadol. It was making me so nauseous, and I just like was not feeling well. And I think it was very big of me to even think I could go back to grad school the next day. But that's me. I'm probably would be like, patient zero, because like I would go to class all the time, probably not feeling well because I felt like I could never miss class. So anyway, but I had to take that week off, and thankfully I did, to rest, to recuperate. By that Friday, I was in so much pain from the pain med not really working that I had to call my mom to come get me, and I was gonna have her drive me to the emergency department. However, I couldn't even get out of bed. I was in so much pain. So she had to call 911, and the squad had to come. Let me just tell you, I was like living in an apartment building. I was freaking out. So I told her to like, please have them turn the sirens off, because I did not want everyone to like hear and see what was happening. So, they did do that, but they ended up coming to get me because I'm freaking out. I started to have a panic attack in the midst of all of this. So I'm like in pain, can't breathe. It's just like all the things. But they get me to the emergency department again, and basically they just said it was poor pain control, so they ended up giving me, I think, oxycodone, and that worked much better. So the treatment for all of this was to be on a blood thinner for about 9 months is what I did. You can follow with a Coumadin clinic, because that's one of the medications. I took warfarin, which is the generic for Coumadin. Now they have much better treatments. I think Eliquis is like the really big thing they do, because really they don't like to give Coumadin or warfarin to people because it's like really not the best med. But if you have to take it, you have to take it. So I did that for 9 months. I didn't go to a Coumadin clinic. I had my primary care doctor manage it. And let me just tell you, I said I was afraid of needles. This made me not afraid of needles, because one, I had to do the injections myself with the Lovenox, which got to stop when I went to the emergency department again and got the better pain med. But then I had to start doing the medication and to test what's called your PT-INR, which is like what they're testing for your blood clotting factor. You have to be within a certain range. So you have to get pretty frequent lab draws to make sure you're within range. And you're supposed to stay away from vitamin K. So that's a lot of like your leafy greens and broccoli and like healthy things. So my doctor said, don't stop eating those things. She's like, we'll just adjust, your medication accordingly. So had very frequent lab draws throughout this time for about the 9 months. So, but through all of this, the PCOS, right, was kind of unmanaged. I mean, I was told you can't take birth control. So I'm like, well, now what? Went to an endocrinologist who prescribed me a medication called metformin. And if you are familiar with that, it is a medication for diabetes. It's not at the time, I can't remember what it is now, but it wasn't FDA approved for PCOS. So I tried taking it. Worst GI upset of my entire life. It was so bad. I came to the endocrinologist crying because I just like could not handle it. So they switched me to the brand name, which is Glumetza. I handled it fine, but it just didn't fix my PCOS the way that we were hoping it would like help with getting me periods and helping with some of the adverse side effects I was having with the PCOS. So after that, the endocrinologist kind of was like, I have nothing more for you. So really, I've had no doctor in the last 14 years who's really had a good solid plan for my PCOS. And I say all of this because I feel like women's health in general is so ignored. We're so gaslit into believing that like when something is off, that it's not real. It's not true. So a lot of the reason I share this story with you is because I want you to know that if there is something going on in your body that is not right, you've got to be your own best advocate. You've got to seek out medical help. You've got to keep pressing into it. Because if I had just written off that this was just some back pain from a massage, like I might not be here today, which is a really, like a scary, obviously a scary thought. But I'm very thankful that that was not my time to go, and there was other things for me in this world to share and do. And if you listen to the story, I really appreciate it that you listened. And once again, I'm not trying to fearmonger, but like, I think it's real that you need to know that there's risks that come with anything. But I think it's doing your education. I think that it's being aware that these things can happen. And I don't think that it's a one size fit all box. Like, birth control didn't work for me. That doesn't mean it won't work for you. But yeah, I mean, obviously it was a scary experience for me. And if hearing my story does scare you from birth control, I understand why, but I think that there's also other things that you would need to look into if you don't want to put a medication into your body. So anyway, once again, appreciate you listening. And if you have a similar story, or just like, my story resonated with you, I would love for you to share in the comments below. And I generally share fashion content and beauty content. So if that's something of interest to you, please, like this video. Please subscribe, because I'd love to see you in one of my other videos. So anyway, thanks for listening. Bye.